Welcome to the 19th episode of Redeeming the Time. I am your host, Jacob Wells. This is my co-host, my dad, Keith Wells, and we have a special guest with us today, our main man, BJ.
Hey, well, thanks for having me.
We're excited for this one.
Yeah. We promised our very first guest was going to be BJ, and it is, and we're glad to have you here.
My love for podcasts, I told them both that I was really into them. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, before we even, the first person, one of the first people I talked to about the podcast and if we should do it was BJ. So we had to get him on here.
Yeah.
And get him on here as our first guest. So.
Yeah. Faithful teacher here over many, many years now.
I feel so honored.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Okay. All right, so this is dropping on May 6th, which is mine and Callie's anniversary.
Oh, so sweet.
So, special day. And with that being said, BJ, what is your favorite sports team?
Nice segue.
That's a good segue.
Well, everybody knows, most people know that as far as football goes, I'm a big Dallas Cowboys fan. And my college team, of course, is Ohio State. And I know that, doesn't sit well with certain people at the table, but
so we have UK basketball and Ohio State football.
Oh, yeah.
Two the biggest homer teams in America.
Oh, yeah.
All right, very
good.
Right.
I will tell just one funny story about. Okay, so Julie is a huge UK basketball fan. Her whole family's UK basketball fans, and of course I'm Ohio State football, and so we have this pact that we made that we're not allowed to root against. So I can't root against Kentucky basketball.
Fair enough.
And she can't root against Ohio State football. Now, you don't have to root for them, but you just can't root against them.
Yeah.
But I think I do a good job of, because I actually don't mind UK basketball, so I'll find myself kind of rooting for them. She never roots for Ohio State football, but she just doesn't root against them. So
she doesn't have to. They just demolish everybody they play.
Right, except for when it matters.
Well, yeah. The
we
last
won't get
couple
into
years.
That. Right.
He's on a short leash, I imagine.
Yeah.
Coach is, yeah.
Oh, Coach Cal's out for UK.
Yeah.
So
we'll see how the new guy does.
Yep. So before we get into,
we were just thrilled to make it to the final. Purdue was like the last time it happened.
Yeah, and you played the best team in college basketball in the last 25 years.
I mean, I was a little kid the last time they made the finals. So crazy. No, last time they made the Final Four. I wasn't even alive the last time they made the final. That's sad. I was just bringing it back to Purdue.
He wants to steal my moment.
Sorry. I got to keep.
I'm sorry, Purdue basketball, Final Four.
We gotta. It doesn't happen. So we gotta. They'll be in the finals, especially now. You guys are forever now in the BC. Well, it's not even called that now. What's it called?
College football playoff?
Yeah, I mean,
with the
Ohio State will forever be in it.
I think they're going to 6 or 8.
Yeah.
So you'll be in it every year.
every year.
All right. So, what is the coolest event you have been to?
Well, we go to concerts sometimes. I have a couple, but I'll share one maybe. So a couple weeks ago, got a chance to go see Andrea Bocelli. Down at the Heritage Bank Center, and we had some pretty decent tickets there, and myself and Julie went, and it was pretty amazing. It's a little known fact that I am actually cultured, just a little bit. I mean, I didn't understand what he was saying in the songs. It was all Italian, but I was there.
Did he do the prayer?
Oh yeah.
Who was the?
So they had this woman come out, and she was a Celine Dion ish person. Yeah. And she came out and she sung. I can't remember what she sung. Power of Love or something. Not that I know Celine Dion music. I'm really embarrassing myself right now.
I don't know anything.
She came out and she did that, and then they kind of segued into that. So she was pretty spot on. Sounded just like her. So, but it was a really cool time.
So if you don't know who that is, look it up, and you will be thankful that you looked it up.
Yeah, and I think as far as another one, we went to a festival 2 summers ago to see Crowder. It was like an outdoor music festival thing, and it was like in June or something like that, and the weather was really nice, and it was just kind of a cool little venue there out in like in the middle of a field somewhere, and I don't even remember where it was at. It was north.
Yeah.
So, like,
I've
you know,
never
an
done
hour and a
one of-
half, you know, like
Yeah, I've never been to one of those festivals. They look
yeah, it was
fun.
it was
Feel like
pre-
at least 3 or 4 of the groups.
yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Let me ask. So, I've heard your testimony before. Tell us about your salvation experience.
all right, try to knock this out fast. So about 2011, I started coming to church based off of invites from my parents. My father got saved kind of later in life. We didn't really grow up going to church at all. So I was in my I was an adult, and he would invite me to church, and he wasn't going here at the time. He was going somewhere else, and I would go. Didn't really care for it too much, to be honest with you. So I didn't really want nothing to do with it. But he started coming here, and he obviously kept inviting me, and I think I'm evident of prayer. That prayer works. I know I've been on prayer sheets in this very church, and I came. I can't remember the specific day. I want to say somewhere around April, and I started coming, and I actually just fell in love with the music. Like just the music here just really drew me, and I came a couple weeks, and eventually the word was preached and the gospel was shared, and felt that tug on my heart and came forward and gave my life to Jesus, and haven't looked back since. So obviously there was some hard bumpy roads of growth along the way. When you're trying to when you give your life to Christ and you are not fully submitting, he will get you where he wants you. So, and that in a nutshell can.
Yeah, that slow process in our life where new things are revealed. And, especially when you get saved later in life, you've already got some probably habits and things of that nature.
Yeah, I was in early 30s when I got saved. And,
wow, 30. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I didn't realize you were that old by that time.
Yeah. Now look at me.
Yeah.
I'm on a podcast with the Wells.
Oh boy.
I mean,
That's
come
nothing
on.
special right there.
Well, you're faithful, and I appreciate it,
Thank
and we're glad to have you part of this today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So before we I got another question.
Okay.
So getting to the reading and the podcast and everything, what has been your favorite account so far
that's a good
in
question.
the reading?
Well, do you want me to answer that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you guys are done talking. I don't know. I'm really. I would say. Okay, my 3 favorite books of the Bible: Genesis, Luke,
Okay.
Okay.
and maybe Revelation. Even though that's one of the ones you study and you study and study, you still don't really maybe get it all.
Yeah.
But I love the creation story and how things came to be. So my favorite account probably is Joseph
Joseph.
and his whole
Yeah.
deal, and how it comes to at the end how all of a sudden how he becomes the one that shows the grace and mercy to his brothers even though they didn't deserve it.
Yep.
So I don't know. Probably Joseph's probably my favorite account to date.
That's good.
What about yours? I don't know if we've said this.
Oh yeah, Joseph and David. Those two. I mean, those are major characters, obviously, in the history of Israel. But yeah, I agree. Joseph
there's a
account
reason.
is such both pictures of Christ in many ways. So I like all the details, and you can just dwell and dwell and dwell on them. Some of them you dwell and you're like, they probably don't have any symbolism at all, but you go a little too far on that.
Right.
So
It's
that's your hat there. That's Shane and Shane
Oh
hat,
yeah,
right?
Shane and Shane. I wore my Shane and Shane hat today because since this is going across the internet somehow, some way, Shane and Shane's gonna see it, and they're gonna be like,
We're
they're
gonna
gonna
tag
come,
'em.
yeah, they're gonna come
We're
to
gonna
our
tag.
church and hang out.
We're gonna.
They're actually our guests next week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, oh, that guy,
You never heard?
Actually, what's funny is we were at the Sing conference 2 years ago, and I had my Shane and Shane hat on, and we went to the Shane and Shane breakout session, and the one Shane, the one Shane, Shane, he actually, I was walking up to him, he was like, "Hey man, nice hat." So we sat there and talked for a couple minutes, but yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, if you like music, especially the Psalms, they have 3 albums that they've put Psalms to music. You've heard them sung here, several of them, but good music.
Yeah, honestly, Shane and Shane, music's a big thing to me. Like I said before, that's what drew me to the church. I just always been really into music, and Shane and Shane's that kind of music that like kind of brings me peace because of how its word is doctrinally correct, but then also it's like it's kind of peaceful. Like it's like you throw it in the car, throw it on in the car ride, or you're trying to decompress a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
You've heavily influenced your wife. The choir is now I think we're on our 3rd or 4th Shane and Shane song that we got a new one we're learning with the youth choir.
Yeah, I'm gonna say she probably was Shane and Shane fan before me, but
I don't know. I think
I think I've influenced it.
Yeah, I agree.
So my favorite is.
I'm sorry, we didn't ask.
Yeah.
No, I'm just playing.
Never mind. Let's go.
No. What's your favorite?
I would say when David gets anointed. That's my favorite. I think that's my favorite chapter in the Bible.
Anytime David's anointed, I think of Mike Hefker, and he sings this a song about that.
Yeah.
Wasn't the oldest, it wasn't the youngest. Yeah.
I also like Hezekiah and that whole thing. But all right.
Well, let's get to it today.
Let's get into it. We got Monday, so the whole week we've got First Chronicles 15 to 2 Chronicles 8, and on Monday we've got First Chronicles 15 through 17. So we just left off last week with the ark being left in Obed-Edom, and with David's victories and establishing him in the nation in that area, and then this chapter we go back to preparing the ark to come back to Jerusalem.
Yeah. So 15, he's actually doing it the right way, and they're bringing the ark into Jerusalem. There's something interesting here. It's not in 2 Samuel, verse 13. He's almost like he's blaming the priests for because ye did it not at the first, the Lord our God made a breach upon us. I've never heard David blame someone else, but he's definitely blaming them there for that. I thought that was sort of interesting.
Yeah, I think that the funny thing about I try to come up with titles for each chapter, like
Sure.
'cause I feel like that's what you guys have done. So not all of them are going to be funny titles, but for this one I came up with a somewhat funny title. Just we're kind of rehashing, the Chronicles kind of rehashing things,
right?
And when we get to the end of the chapter, it rehashes the part where Michael is kind of despising Derek or not Derek, David in his heart and her heart. So and because he's singing and dancing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I titled this chapter "So You Think You Can Dance."
That's good. I put that there too. Isn't it interesting that that's such a big deal that it's recorded both times?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah, she must have really hated it.
Yeah, this is a big deal here. So
they say when something's recorded multiple times in Scripture, you're really supposed to pay attention to it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. But verse 22, they introduced, being a music guy for years and years, Chenaniah, the chief singer, is mentioned there, and you don't really hear much about him in the 1st and 2nd Samuel. So
I noticed in the Chronicles there is a big emphasis on the music whenever they do stuff.
a lot more
than before.
Which, without a doubt.
Which makes sense because of what the Chronicles actually was.
I think it's important to note, just in general, for Christians, if we take a personal application from this, is you see this in verses 28 and 29. You see like the excitement level of everybody as this is going on. They're like spiritual. They're in a spiritual high. Their excitement going on over the this process of moving the ark or whatever. And I think it's okay. I think this is just to say like it's okay to be excited.
Yeah.
About God, and it's okay to be excited about the things of God. and
I like
I think
that.
that's lost sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not not necessarily pointing anything or anybody out. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, we allow ourselves to get.
And then
overwhelmed.
with Michael at the tail end there, where it says she despised him, and it's just bitterness at its finest there.
Oh yeah, without
And bitterness will destroy you, and it will destroy everyone around you. And have you guys ever thought about? I mean, I have a tendency sometimes when I'm reading scripture to go and find people and be like and kind of see their point of view.
Yeah, put yourself in their shoes.
like here we have Michael, who is the daughter of Saul, and she was married, but then he kind of married her off to somebody else, and then now she's taken, and she's I don't
snagged
know.
back. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, and then what happens later to her sons, and yeah,
It's
she's got a rough life without a doubt,
Mm-hmm.
and she tends to lean back on her dad's family than she does embracing her life with the king.
yeah. So chapter 16 is basically a continuation of 15.
Yeah, it's like a big festival afterwards,
so-
a celebration.
because he puts the ark in the tent that he prepared, and then they have offerings, peace offerings, burnt offerings, and all that.
Yeah, and if you go to verse 7, it's interesting. Put your finger in that chapter and then go over to Psalm 105. Most of what he says there is Psalm 105. It's not all of it, but it's most of it. I also saw in verses 37, 39, I really didn't pay attention to this in 2 Samuel, but he moves the ark to Jerusalem, but he leaves the rest of the tabernacle in Gibeah. So and we're going to see this play out several times. So they still have to go to Gibeah to do sacrifices, but the Ark of the Covenant is with them. So this had to be some confusion.
But do you think he did that because he wanted to build the temple?
I think eventually he does. That's not the timeline that we're told.
Yeah.
But I think he wanted the presence of God in Jerusalem, because that's where that's the Ark of the Covenant. That's where God's resting place with them.
Yeah, and we see in verses 5 and 6 and 7 there how it starts talking about Asaph, who was the chief musician in charge of the music, and you had kind of touched on that a little bit, and how he was a writer of a few psalms, I think 6 or 7, I think, I don't know.
He's mentioned a lot more in Chronicles.
There's another.
I like how it talks about the rest of the fellows here mentioned were the brethren who played music as well. And it talks about the different instruments, that they had there, and which is another call to, hey, it's okay to have music. It's okay to play music. It's okay to be excitable. Yeah. Dude, have you ever really thought like, okay, so it was like it called them like Asaph and their brethren, and it names these guys. They're like, were they like a band? And if they were, was their name like Asaph and the Brethren? Like,
Asaph and the Bros.
Yeah.
There's definitely we see later on. I mean, there's hundreds of musicians that are going to be used here, which is really cool. So.
Yeah.
All right, finishing that day up, we get to the Davidic covenant in chapter 17.
Yeah, so I found verse 1 interesting, and I found it, I think I said it in 1 Samuel or 2 Samuel or whenever it was.
2 Samuel 7, yeah.
Where he's sitting in his house of cedars, this marvelous house that he has, and he sees the presence of God in a tent, and that's why this is backwards here, and it kind of shows his character and where he was at with the Lord.
Do you think the split temple, though, or split tabernacle, had something to deal with that? I think that might have played into it a little bit. That, hey, the whole thing's not here. Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't know. I'm just thinking about that. The rest of this it's pretty much exactly like 2 Samuel 7. There's not a lot more detail. I did have one term I wanted to mention that if you're in a King James Bible, it's the word in verse 21. It talks about, and what one nation in the earth is like thy people Israel, whom God went to redeem to be his own people, to make a name of greatness and terribleness. Now, our vernacular today, terrible means that's horrible.
Bad.
It's something bad. But here, terribleness, this is dealing with the terrible meaning the awesomeness of God, the fear and reverence of God. So when you're reading that, don't take that in the way we think of the word today. That's what it would mean at that point. So I just thought that was worth pointing out.
I liked verse 24. You see the word the name of the Lord here, which is one of my favorite names for the Lord is that he's referred to as the Lord of Hosts.
Yeah.
Over Israel, and I love that name, the Lord of Hosts. I feel like it's such a power move, to call him Lord of Hosts. It's like, my God is the general of angel armies and spiritual warriors.
Yeah.
So
It's a power name for sure.
It's like, you got these angelic forces, that if you're a Christian and you believe that there's angelic things happening and there's all this spiritual things happening, but the Lord of Hosts is like the general commander of the armies of heaven. So I like that. We see that in verse 24, where it talks about he's the Lord of Hosts.
Yeah.
All right, day 2.
So yeah, the rest. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Solomon basically, the prophet Nathan says, "You're not going to build the temple Solomon's going to."
Yeah.
So that's
probably the best part, the description of the chapter. I went off on a tangent.
No,
that's good. That's very good.
So Tuesday we got 18 through 21, and 18 is a short chapter.
I literally have 4 lines written down.
Yeah, it just goes over his victories over the surrounding nations and stuff like that.
How it mentions Gath being taken again. That city was like a tennis ball.
Yeah.
I mean, as we start going through these other kings, I had Gath. Philistine had Gath. We're back to them. But I mean, you would not want to live there.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
I had an interesting title for this chapter too. I called it the Conquering and Collecting the Nouns. Nouns, people, places, and things. So in this chapter, we see, David's kind of winning victories, and he's got the spoils of war, and he's recovering the lands, and he's gaining riches, and he's collecting servants. And it's probably not for the faint of heart. If it was a
I need you to title my lessons.
Yeah,
I'm so bad.
We're gonna send you our sermons and give it a title, please.
Just let you get a title. They're not all fun.
I just watched something on titling your sermons for the internet or for YouTube if you actually want people to click on them outside your church family.
Oh, yeah.
Of an interest.
It's not clickbait, but you want people to actually be interested.
If you use church words that only church people know, then you're less likely to have, which makes perfect sense. But
I thought 14 and 17 was interesting. It just shows that Joab was the general here, and I'm fascinated with Joab.
I like
that whole
dynamic
there.
I like in 9:11 where it talks about a particular king named Tuau, I think his name is, and he comes on the scene, and he's kind of like he kind of comes to David and he's like, "Hey man, thanks. Let me give you some. Let me give you some things, some gold and silver, because you took down, one of my enemies, which was the king of Zobah, and it's like not that we're necessarily friends, but hey, thanks for doing me a solid,
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely what's going on there. And I guess he's far enough away to where David wasn't interested in him. So.
Then he dedicated it all to the Lord too. So
which we're going to see come about in a few chapters.
David he's a man after God's own heart right now. So then we got 19, and it starts with the Ammonite king dying and his son taking over. And
yeah, we talked about this last time where
David tries to show kindness. He gets the other king gets bad advice and says, "Hey, he's just trying to spy on you."
And God uses the whole situation actually to minimize Syria, because the guy realizes, he made a mistake. He sends all of his money over to Syria. Syria comes out to help them, and then
you see the toughness and the leadership of Joab and Abishai.
Yeah, this is the play the man card. They don't use that term here. They use the term in 2 Samuel. But, you've got Syria on one side against Joab. You've got you've got the Ammonites against Abishai, and their backs are to each other, and they just fight their way out, and they like play the man.
It's awesome.
We just talked about this term in our growth groups the other day. In 1 Corinthians 16, there's a phrase, quit you like men? I think that's how it's, quit you like men. Very similar, like play the man, whereas this be bold, stand up and do what, it's not a phrase we use today. But
we should start.
Yeah, that's quit you like men. Okay. I didn't have much else in that chapter.
Yeah, so then we get another short chapter here in chapter 20, and I think it's important to remind ourselves that this is a recap of what happened, of things that were important to the exiled Israelites that were coming back, because you won't see a lot of the details and everything that you see in 2 Samuel, or 1st and 2nd Samuel here.
Yeah, because this is the chapter David stayed home, and the situation with Bathsheba. I saw a commentator, he said the account was so well known that he chose not to reiterate that. I think Ezra was always also, if he is the author, was trying to, we're setting this nation up as we return for victory. We're not going to dwell on the sinful actions. I tend to agree with that.
So I think we have Joab, who ravages the country there, and I guess there was some sort of an awesome crown that was taken and given to King David. So I don't know if you're into the Lord of the Rings movies types and just kingdoms. It's kind of cool to think that there was this immaculate crown. And isn't this the chapter where they kind of go and they fight some of Goliath's family?
Yeah. You see at the end.
Yeah. At the end of this,
verses
4 through 8.
The six-fingered and toed giant.
Yeah. They wipe out Goliath's 4 other brothers. He has his nephew takes out one of them. Mm-hmm. He showed that it could be done, and nobody else was fearful after that, which, that's a great thing to remember also. There's one thing for confusion's sake, just let me mention, in verses 1 through 3, I get the right chapter here, the phrasing is odd. It says, verse 3, he brought out the people that were in it and cut them with saws, with harrows of iron, and with axes. That doesn't mean he is literally killing them or cutting them. If you go back to 1 Samuel, he put them to work with those under saws and irons and axes in 2 Samuel 12. I just thought that was a point to bring out, because the first time I read that, I was like, what? That's not, he didn't do that. That's not what he was.
So we see the children of Ammon becoming servants and hard laborers as they're captured, which I think is going to be important as we get into 2 Chronicles and we start seeing the construction of the temple, and it gets into there's particular verses. We'll get to it when we get there, but it talks about how they were so many of the hard laborers and servants that did the pretty much the grunt work. Yeah. So kind of laying the foundation there.
Yeah, every victory he has, we're going to see he uses that as the basis for the temple. Yeah, I agree.
So then we go into chapter 21, and we have the last chapter of 2 Samuel here, summarizing that in this chapter. And the thing that right off the rip, which is verse 1, it says, and Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel.
Right.
That sentence right there.
I think the way Satan wants to provoke people is to play into their pride.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, I think that among many things probably for here could be taken, but that's what comes to mind when I think of that.
Yeah.
David's this king, and he Satan just is provoking him to find out actually how big of a king he actually is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's an interesting play off of last chapter to this chapter, because there's 20 years of history not recorded here. As I was talking about before, Ezra chose not to do here. It doesn't mention, the sinful details of Bathsheba. It doesn't mention the the rebellion of his son Absalom or any of the other stuff that his sons had done. It just goes to this end account. But in here, the last chapter was he got this massive gold crown with precious stones on his head. And now we're playing into his pride,
Right.
as you said.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a mistake.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
No.
So did the Lord allow Satan to do this? To do that?
Yeah, because
just like kind of in Job, until he allowed Satan to attack Job.
Yeah, because the 2 Samuel account of it uses the Lord's name in that. Let me find that. Talk amongst yourselves.
We'll just stare at you.
Let's stare awkwardly until he finds it.
Okay, and again the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved David against them to say, "Go number Israel and Judah."
So
there it uses the Lord's name, and
okay.
here it says Satan. So the Lord removed and allowed Satan to go in and do this.
Interesting.
So he's fighting using his power, the powers of the angels, and not allowing Satan to do things. And at times when we get built up, there are times where he stands back and goes, "Okay, here you go."
I think though the amazing thing to get from that is that David recognizes his sin and then he repents. We see that in verse 8. It says, "And David said unto God, I have sinned greatly because I have done this thing, but now I beseech thee, do away thy iniquity of thy servant, for I have done very foolishly." He recognizes that this was a mistake.
Like that, yeah.
And that's one thing I can appreciate about David is that when he messes up, he oftentimes realizes it and repents, and he's having, and in verse 10 kind of just lets us know that, even though you repent of your sin, your sins will be forgiven, but your sins still bear consequences.
Yeah, there's consequence for sin.
And then that's what we see the rest of this chapter.
Yeah, we get that 3 punishment thing that we were talking about.
Before we hit that, if you're a numbers person, there's an interesting thing here compared to 2 Samuel 24. So this is one of those where you could easily say, there was just whoever was transcribing just messed up and left some details out. But when you actually go to look at it, you'll say, there's some really cool stuff here. So just to point this out, there's different numbers here. One says there were 800,000. Another one says there was 1.1 million. And then in Judah, there was 500,000. The other says 470,000. So what's the difference here? If you go and look, there was the 800,000, plus this doesn't record 2 groups. There was a standing army in 1 Chronicles 27 of 288,000, and a 12,000 attachment in Jerusalem found in 2 Chronicles 1. So if you add those numbers together, it gives you exactly 1.1 million. And then there was a standing army in Judah, where we learn about in 2 Samuel 6, of 30,000. So 470 plus the 30 gives you exactly the 500. That's cool stuff.
Yeah.
So it is there. You just had to look. So he gives the 3 choices.
Yeah, after he takes the census, and Joab again, it's the same count, but Joab tries to talk him out of it. Yeah, I just find that interesting. And then you get he chooses to be punished by God's hand and not not a different nation. And then we see the account with the threshing floor, and it's a different name. It's Ornan instead of Arana.
It's just
spelling of. Do you think that he chose that based off of it being just like a persecution towards him, or do you think he just took it because it was the shortest?
Well, he says he wants to fall in the hand of God because God has mercy, and he's looking. But 3 days versus
3 years, 3 months, 3 days. Let's see here.
Let's get it over with.
Let's take our whooping where we can. Yeah, I probably so. I would think so.
It's had to have been something to.
Well, here's the one I want you guys to think about. Verse 16, it says David actually saw the angel with his sword drawn.
Yeah.
What?
Right.
And be afraid to.
And 70,000 men were already dead because of this angel. That's incredible.
Yeah, in
That-
verse 30 it talks about how he was afraid
Yeah.
of the angel. He was afraid because of the sword of the angel of the Lord. Yeah, that's insane.
I would be too.
There's another phrase that's really cool there too, being David being the shepherd. In verse 17, he says he's being a good leader, crying out for his people. But as for these sheep, he calls his people sheep. I thought that's an interesting phrase. You don't see that. You see in the Psalms, but you don't see it any here. And you know, that's true leadership there. I'm willing to take this myself.
Yeah. So now we got Wednesday. We got
One more detail there. Sorry.
We don't have Wednesday.
So in verses 24 and 25, remember this is a special place that he bought, this threshing floor. This is the place where we'll see later on. This is Mount Moriah. This is where Abraham offered Isaac, or went to offer Isaac. This is later where the temple will be built, and where on one of those hills in that area where the crucifixion of Jesus Christ will occur. But there's another number issue here. In 2 Samuel 24:24, it says the price of the threshing floor was 50 shekels. But here it says he bought the place for 600 shekels. So the difference, and if you look in the words that are used there, he bought the threshing floor, but he also bought the whole place, the whole area, because he's going to build the whole temple there.
Right.
Not just this threshing floor would be just a room this size, where you would throw up the hay and that kind of stuff. So that's the difference there. I thought that was important to know. Go ahead, sir.
So now we got Wednesday. We got chapters 22 through 24, and this is where David is preparing for the construction of the temple. Even though he's not going to be building it, he's preparing for it. We also see Solomon's chosen to be the king, which is refuting. Remember when we were talking about if Nathan and Bathsheba were
were they manipulating the
manipulated
king,
David
an
when he was
old
old?
king?
No, it was not. In this chapter, you see that
Over and over, yeah.
that Solomon was chosen.
Really,
David.
everything from here to the end of the book, it's all new information compared to 2 Samuel. You don't see all this kind of detail here. But yeah, like you said, there's no doubt Solomon was selected by God.
Yeah.
And he starts to prepare the temple things. He knows that he's not going to be the one that builds it, but he starts putting things into play for Solomon. And he starts to command, I think we see this in verse 17, he starts to command all the princes of Israel to help Solomon.
Yeah.
And the wise leaders need to give good solid counsel and just kind of set up the way it's going to happen and all this stuff. It's kind of cool, that he is laying the groundwork for Solomon,
Yeah.
I got a question on that exact verse for you. What do you guys think? Does he say this after Adonijah tries to claim the throne, or before Adonijah tries to claim the throne? Because if it's before, they were really rebelling against the king. Joab was. You've
Everybody
got
was.
priests that were. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
If it's after, he's just trying to
Don't do this again.
Don't do this again.
Right.
He's the man. I don't know.
Yeah.
We won't know, but
I feel
that
like it's
was an
after.
interesting question to me.
Yeah, because I have it in my notes for chapter 23 where it's Adonijah and Absalom are not recorded at all in Second Chronicles in First Chronicles here, and there was chapters on chapters in Second Samuel. About this.
None of those folks are mentioned. That whole part of David's history
Which
is
then goes back to Ezra telling the people that were coming back what actually what the Lord wanted them to know.
he wants them to see the piety of King David, and this is who we're emulating.
Yeah, not concerned with all the
Sinful things that happen in the family's life. Yeah. So we get to the roles in the temple. You have a good title for 23? Because roles in the temple is pretty boring.
It's not as funny. It just says everybody does their part.
All right, very good.
I mean, not all of them can be bangers.
Yeah. That is. If you look at my titles, that's for sure.
Mine are never
What'd
bangers.
you get?
I just say I don't even have one for this
All
one.
right, so mine's great.
Yeah.
So far, mine's the best.
Yours is the banger. Yes.
So, Solomon was made king while his dad's still alive. How cool would that have been? And nerve-wracking at the same time. They would all be assigned months. We're going to see this in great detail. 4,000 musicians. There's all kinds of other numbers there, but 4,000 musicians. That's a lot.
The emphasis.
5, yeah.
The emphasis
Julie
on
tried to
music.
get all them organized to have their time to sing.
Yeah. I need you guys to say yes. And what's the little app you guys use?
Planning Center.
Yeah, I didn't get your confirmation in Planning Center.
Yeah, there you go.
And 3 through 5, we see the Levites were numbered, every man 30 years and up, at 38,000, 24,000 were set to do the work in the house of the Lord. 6,000 became officers and judges. 4,000 were gatekeepers, which you had a sermon on that not too long ago. And 4,000 praised the Lord with singing and instruments. I'm not good at math, so I just want to say that
it adds up.
That's a lot of people.
I'm proud that I was able to do that. Nobody do the math on that and tell me I'm wrong.
Nope, it adds up. That's 38,000.
But do you see the importance that was given in the house of the Lord for the service and in the work that and the place that was going to become the place of praise and worship? It's a big deal.
Yeah, so many people think you just show up to church and it just happens.
Right.
And yes, the Holy Spirit needs to have free reign in our lives and in our services. But we see here David took great care for the administration of every area of his life, and especially the worship of the Lord. And it's important that we think through and we have things organized. And it's always, when we go on mission trips, I always tell it's easier to deviate from a plan than to not have a plan at all. And that's what we see him doing here.
Yeah, just wing it.
Oh boy.
Chapter 24, it goes into the great details of the temple, of what the like the priests, what they are to do.
So he breaks them into 24 sections, and each one got, they would go 2 times a year for 2 weeks, is what history tells us. Interesting, when they come back, when we get to Nehemiah, when they come back, there's only 4 of the 24 courses ready to go. And by the time you get to Nehemiah 12, 22 of them are. So what year was that? I think it was within a 4-year time. 7-year time frame. So in 527 BC, there's only 4 of them. By the time it's 520, 22 of them are back operating like they were supposed to. So they took it seriously as well. And I think a cool thing too, verses 20 through 31, it talks about how they were divided. They would cast lots to see who it was. So it didn't matter seniority or any of that kind of stuff. Serving the Lord was just as it fell, which that's great to see as well. All right.
Like how we see Eleazar and Ithamar as the priests, and for some reason it decided to talk about. Says they were divided, but more chief men were found of the sons of Eleazar than Ithamar, 16 men to 8. I don't know. For some reason, they decided to put that in there.
Yeah.
Like it couldn't have just been these are the executed priests, and there's and
He
the
had
chief
more.
men were found of this group of people, and it was cool because it was like collectively a whole.
Yeah.
But up there, like this guy 16, this guy 8.
Sorry for your luck.
Right. I don't know.
Reminds me of like when John, right? No, when Peter, when they're running to go to.
Oh yeah.
Who is it? It's
John outran
John and
Peter.
Yeah.
He just happened to mention
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it says it twice.
Yeah.
I
I
outran
just
you.
wanted to
twice.
make sure
I
that
beat
was in
you.
there.
There's some good memes. I think we've sent those to each other.
Yeah.
So now we got Thursday. We got chapters 25 through 27, and Asaph is mentioned a lot here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here's the musicians. Yeah.
That's
and-
my title, The Service of the Musicians.
Mm.
So they're also broken into 24 courses. So they would serve, 2 weeks at a time. So this allows them. This is to understand this. This is an agricultural society. And they have crops that come in and out throughout the whole year. There's not much of a winter there in Israel, so they're always putting crops out, harvesting crops in, and it's important that they couldn't have everybody there at the same time, and they didn't need that many. I mean, you don't need 4,000 musicians in a temple at one time. So there's, whatever that is divided by 24, there's that many of them there at a time. I'm sure that Asaph and Heman here were probably, or however you say his name, were probably there all the time, but not everyone was. So that's, and here's a cool thing. If you want to consider music, if you think music isn't useful in a church service, or it's just, the little salt and pepper added to a service, not so. He calls it in verse 1, he calls it prophecy. And in verse 5, he calls the king's seer. This shows the value of music in the service. Now, obviously, I'm going to say that because that's what I did for a great majority of my life. But they do more than just aid the message. Many times they proclaim the message. I mean, if it's not worth singing or hearing. It doesn't always have to be sung. Sometimes it's just the knowing. Some of the you get a guy who sits down or a lady sit down. They'll play some song and it's very beautiful. But if you don't know what was behind it, sometimes it doesn't mean as much. But if you get up there and the guy's playing "How Great Thou Art," and oh wow, it just swells in your heart and your mind. There's a reason every movie has music behind it. It changes.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen those clips of a super intense scene in a movie and there's no music at all? And you're
awkward silence.
Or they change the music to.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. They'll take they'll take a Star Wars scene and something silly like that.
Yeah,
you're like, who cares, right?
Yeah.
That's.
Sorry for taking your.
No, I was excited about that. So, you got something to add to that, or?
No, just I think again you talked about it. I think in one of the previous chapters, just the importance that went into the preparation of a service, and it's not just people showing up willy nilly. And here we see it again with the service of the musicians, how they cast their lots to see what order they would take charge of the service.
Yeah. Chapter 26. Wow. Chapter 26. We have the division appointments for gatekeepers, treasurers, and the porters. So
I had to look up porters because at first I didn't know what that meant. So I looked it up and it's gatekeepers. So. Yeah.
By the way, we're advertising here, free advertisement today. We took the ladies to lunch. It was administrative assistant day. We went to I Heart Mac and Cheese over in College Hill. Recommend it. Very good.
What did you order? You didn't order mac and cheese?
I got flatbread, but it was good. It had pesto on it. Oh, it was really good.
So actually,
I got the mac and cheese.
I was saying, so actually, how was the mac and cheese?
Mac and cheese was phenomenal.
They got Julie and Rick got spare rib? No,
short rib.
Short ribs.
Short ribs?
No, it was short. No, short rib mac and cheese. So it had chunks of beef in there.
Mushrooms.
I guess are short ribs beef or is that pork? I don't know.
I think it's pork.
I don't know.
Oh well, it looked good.
And then
they have gluten free.
Brent got a bacon jalapeno mac and cheese bite, and he bit into it, and he was like, "Whoa!" So he gave it to Brother Rick, and he's eating it like candy.
Yeah. If you don't know this, Brother Rick could lick the sun, and it would not bother him at all.
He's like, "Yeah, these are pretty good." And
he's
Brent's like, over there.
It's got a little heat.
Taking drinks of his.
All right.
We just took a Bible intermission.
Yeah, we did.
Book of Chronicles.
Yeah,
about macaroni and cheese.
Okay, we're back.
All right, we're back.
So the porters, these gatekeepers, they set the limits. One thing. By setting the limits, they're deciding if they could come in or not, and they're really making people aware of the holiness of the temple and the holiness that was required in the people to enter. Now, it's different than a church, I understand, but it is still, we should feel free to come to church,
right.
But at the same time, it's serious. We're serving the Lord, and so.
What if this was modern day and we had porters at our doors, and we're like, nope, you ain't ready. Can you just imagine? Like, it's kind of funny to think about, like, but like here, it's like it's real. Like these guys are guarding they're guarding the gates and the
that's
doors,
true.
and they're not letting their job was to make sure that only the people that were ready to serve and worship could enter into the temple.
Well,
because the temple was that holy. And it was that nostalgic, and if you was trying to come in there acting silly, they'd send you back to the pond because you was a silly goose.
Well, how? I've never heard that one. That's funny. But think of the comparison, though. I do like that because now you want someone to come to the service that's lost and, looking however they look and saying whatever they say so that they can realize through you can preach them. Obviously, we should go out and preach as well and speak to folks. But the service has a twofold purpose now. It is to prepare the saints.
Yeah.
I think we way underemphasize that.
Oh yeah.
That the service is not just evangelistic.
Yeah.
Because some churches you go to, that's all it is. And the church service is to prepare us, the body, to go out. But it does have to have that element of
we have a tendency to take everything from
Christ.
a person coming in being a lost point of view, and not the people that are coming in that are Christians.
preparing them.
And being like, hey, you're a Christian, and you need to make sure your heart's prepared, your heart's right, before you come in and
I think
try to receive this worship. And
I think the whole seeker thing that came about over the last couple of decades has flip-flopped that in the minds of folks. Well, I would even go farther back than that. We've always invite folks. Well, okay, well, we're all supposed.
I need it too.
We also need to build up those that are Christians as well. So that's a little off the subject, but not completely. All right.
Chapter 27, it deals with the military
Yeah,
here.
division of the army.
It divides it into 12 instead of 24 here. So they serve a month of the year. And he appoints captains over all of them and talks about tribal leaders and stuff like that.
Think about how smart that was to keep your standing army fit. I mean, it's sort of like our National Guard where they have to go serve a week or a weekend every month. Keeps you ready to go.
Yeah,
I feel like when we see here or talks about the military bodies, how David got this going here. And then you look into future Solomon, his son, how he kind of takes everything to the next level, even like industry and military and all this stuff. And it's like to this point in the Bible, like you have many battles that have been fought, but like did people in kingdoms actually have like governed military like David and Solomon set up, like to the way that he infrastructured it?
I don't know.
Like, because I find it kind of amazing,
Yeah.
You would think as these empires start to rise that they would have definitely taken a note from that book for sure.
Yeah.
And it would have had to.
Right. Just the insight and knowledge that.
Yeah. I mean, to this day, you serve in Israel. If both men and women have to serve a certain amount of time, like 19 and 20 or 2 years, or I don't know how many. And the weirder thing is, like, if it's Jacob's time, my family has to pay while he's in the army. The government doesn't pay like we pay our folks in the military. The family would be storing up money to where while he was in the army, I'm paying so he has money to live while he's serving our nation. How much different is that?
Total service.
It's
total service.
Yeah, it really is. They still, to this day.
Yeah.
Verse 33, Ahithophel's mentioned, and
That's what
all.
I was about to say,
Sorry, I stole that from you there.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
He was the advisor of David, who then left for Absalom when Absalom was trying to usurp the throne, and he's here now, and he's supposed to take care of David's stuff.
Yeah, and they don't even mention him. They don't even mention what he does.
So now we got Friday. We end First Chronicles 28, and then we have Second Chronicles 1 at the end of today. So we got 28, 29, and chapter 1 of Second Chronicles.
First Chronicles flies, I think, since if you're doing it this way, like we've already read First
Yeah,
and Second Samuel.
he's just looking for new details.
Yeah.
So 28, he kind of charges Israel and Solomon and he shares his heart, tells them about the building of the temple and how God chose Solomon to build it instead of
He's
him.
got all those leaders there to tell him.
Yes, and then he gives the plans too.
Have you ever watched some of those period pieces where the king stands up and he announces that he was chosen of God to be the king of France or is chosen of God, and so therefore my son will be the next king. David almost has that feel to it, but then he backs it up with, God literally came and told me this. Because if you were reading this separate, you could think that.
Right.
But it's obvious, God called him, and he called Solomon to be his next one. That was sort of going through my head.
Verse 5, says it all there. And all of my sons. And then it says, in parentheses there, for the Lord hath given me many.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
He hath chosen Solomon.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
As a parent, you had hundreds of kids. I don't even know how many he had. He had a lot of wives.
Yeah.
And, not as many as Solomon, but he had
Yeah, he had several wives.
Yeah. So I don't know how many kids he had, but
We get to,
I don't know if I
pretty
wanna-
clear.
Then in chapter 20, it has the be strong and of good courage. It is charged to Solomon there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like.
Well, he
Going
also
back
has
to
a
Joshua.
call to join him. He tells them at the very beginning, he says, all these things, we were just talking about this, all these battles I've won, all this gold and all the tribute money, he tells how much of it he is giving to the temple project. And, we read in 1 Kings, it sounds like, that he went and took all of this stuff and Solomon took all this stuff and he was the one collecting it. No, he's been just stockpiling gold and timber, and he's got it. And it's
He's
also
prepared a farm, yeah.
yeah. Where is it? Later on, we're going to see. I might have skipped that. It's coming up. We'll talk about that in a minute. And he says, so he basically challenges the people to follow him. And in verse 9 it says, they offered willingly with perfect heart. So they are right there with him, and the country is following the Lord. They're following their king, they're following the Lord, and they celebrate. And then verse 22 is interesting. They anoint Solomon a second time. So I wonder if this is after the Adonijah thing, where David anointed him, so just because they had to, else Adonijah was going to take over. And now I think this is all of the people after that situation.
It's more of like an official
Yeah,
thing.
I think so.
Are we in 29?
29. Were we in 28?
No.
I thought
we're
we
in
were-
Oh,
29.
okay, yeah, we're in 29, yeah.
20.
We're in 29 now.
Chapter 28?
I
We're in
don't
chapter
know
28.
where-
I thought we were
don't know
28.
where we're at.
Were we?
Chapter 28.
Okay.
No, it goes right into it.
Yeah.
Because verse 11 in chapter 28, I think, is the nugget here. The key thing you need to get from chapter 28. Says, then David gives to Solomon his son the pattern of the porch and of the house thereof, and of the treasures thereof, and of the upper chambers thereof, and the inner parlors thereof, and of the place of the mercy seat. So, this is the passing of all of the things
That he prepared for him.
That was what I was saying was going to come up later. You're right. That's it. So we don't learn that in 2 Samuel.
Yeah.
God gave him the blueprints, because you're always like, did Solomon just think this up? Is this this is a design he thought God gives us? God had given this to him? No, he gave the design of it to him. That's
Solomon
cool.
gets a lot of credit for the building of the temple, but David did tons and loads of the legwork.
Yeah.
Agreed.
He gave him the plans. Yeah, and then at the end, going into 29, at the end of it, you see Solomon's reign. He was anointed the second time, and then it
Yes, he was.
so it talks about Solomon's reign.
Sorry.
It talks about Solomon's reign, and then it goes back to David's reign and death. So I thought that there's really not anything special about that. It just ends First Chronicles with David, which I think is important. Thinking about Ezra or whoever wrote it at the time. That's
So you have just finished another book of the Bible. I say that because Good job. I mean, keep it up. We're going through the Word of God together. I know some of this time it's tough reading verses. Some of these verses were all the names of those people. You did it. Stick with it. And now we're going into to the rest of the kings again.
Yep.
So.
And these videos and podcasts, they're not going anywhere. It's on the internet, so
forever.
Well,
and this one's gonna get famous because of his hat.
Or until YouTube decides they don't like the Word of God even less than they already do.
So, to round up Friday, you got the first chapter of 2 Chronicles here, and this is the famous account of Solomon asking for wisdom and becoming the wisest king.
And where does he do that
ever.
though? He's in Gibeon.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
he brings everybody over there.
Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he's not in Jerusalem. He goes to the brazen altar.
Yeah.
And he offers like 1,000 burnt offerings, because the furnishings are split. That's interesting. And then the Lord appears to him there, and this will be the last of that.
And when personal application, like we were talking about, he asked for wisdom,
Wisdom
over
and knowledge.
anything. We need to ask for wisdom every day throughout our days.
James tells us to.
Yeah.
I think when you think of Solomon, this is probably the most famous thing that people hear about.
Yeah.
Or people know. You say, "Oh, Solomon, what? What's Solomon mean?" And then they go to this account here in 2 Chronicles chapter 1 about him receiving the wisdom.
Yeah. Becoming the wisest before and after. That's really cool. Saturday, we got 2 Chronicles 2 through 5. And we have the preparations for the building of the temple with getting all the some of the material.
That's where you were talking about those Ammonites and all those guys,
And I got real nerdy with the Phoenician stones last week. So, but again, you have the king of Tyre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that doing some research on that. That's actually, Hiram was a title, meant brother of Ram, and they've dug up a sarcophagus in Tyre with that name engraven on the sarcophagus that
So we see
around
it spelled
1200.
differently.
Yeah.
And here than we did previously.
Yeah.
So we see it as Haram or Haram or
However you say
not
it.
Hiram, as it was said back in Kings.
Yeah, First Kings. Yeah.
Well, it was the same person though. Correct?
Yeah, it's the same
Yeah.
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some difference in spellings and in the different books.
So I got kind of nerdy a little bit.
Good.
With
That's
the
this part.
verses 2 and 18, and we talked about that earlier. I kind of gave the pre to that. Verses 2 and 18 gives the number of the people that he set as the workforce. So it goes all the scores and all that stuff. So it's like he had 70,000 people to bear burdens. He had 80,000 to mine and cut stone, and he had 3,600 to be overseers. And so if you ask yourself who were these people, and you look back at verse 17, it tells you who they are. It says, and they reared up the pillars before the temple. Hold on. And Solomon numbered all the strangers that were in the land of Israel after the numbering wherewith David his father had numbered them, and they were found 150,000 and 300 and 600. So these were, it says, the people that were strangers in the land of Israel. So these would have been all those fun folks that they captured in war,
and those that they had not driven out, and of all those other, the Jebusites and Hittites and all.
Some of them are the Haram's people too, right? Like the skilled
Yeah,
laborers.
well, I think Haram. Yeah, I think it was talking about how Haram or Haram. I'm gonna call him Hiram. I just think it's easier for me because that's who it is. So we see that Solomon sends Hiram, the king of Tyre, sends to him for resources, and says skilled craftsmen.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they were. I mean, I feel like they were like the skilled.
Yeah,
people.
I think
The
they were
Scott
outside
Hales.
of these folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a separate group of people.
It's Scott Hales of the.
Yes.
Yeah,
Scott
exactly.
Hales.
Yeah. Cool verse 6, when David's talking about this, he says about building the temple, but who is able to build him a house, seeing the heaven of heavens cannot contain him? It's an acknowledgement of how, God's power and who He is, but yet the temple is being built.
Not to go down a huge wormhole, but I'm fascinated with this character, Hiram.
Yeah.
From Tyree, because like, so you have Solomon and David, both who are considered some of the best leaders ever, Yeah. And sometimes being a good leader is like finding the proper people for the job.
Oh, without a doubt.
So like like take me for example. Like I'm not great. I'm not a great craftsman, but like I know how to get hold of somebody who's a great craftsman.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we see here. So it's like, as we're building this, we want the best job done. Let's think, who do we know? Where can we get all this awesome lumber from, and all these amazing resources from, and all of these craftsmen that are able to work with their hand and skilled labor and whatnot. And
you see how God just intertwines people in your lives for the right time with that. Yeah.
And he makes a career out of just like being the foreman.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
True.
All right. Verse chapter 3. Did you have something else there?
Nope.
Okay.
We have the building of the temple now. They're starting to build.
There.
Begins the construction.
On Mount Moriah.
Mount Moriah. This is exactly where it tells us that it was Mount Moriah. There's nowhere else it tells us other than right here.
Yeah.
So that's a key thing. This is Genesis 22 with Abraham, 1 Chronicles 21 buying the threshing floor. This is it.
Yeah.
So.
And you see the grandness of, is grandness a word? Grandness of the temple.
Now.
It is now. With the big foundational stones, the details of the cherubims.
Oh yeah.
How big they were, like that, and the gold, silver, precious stones, fine wood,
and he says he brings up the tabernacle of the congregation. So, what was left of that? For this tabernacle had been with them from Moses. So now over 400 years they've used this tabernacle, and now it's time for the temple. And verse 17, they raise up those pillars again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by those two pillars. Verses 15 to 17 talks about them two great pillars that were placed before the temple. You have the one on the right, Jachin, which means he shall establish.
That's right.
And then you have the one on the left, Boaz, which means in him is strength.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
you have to walk through that every time.
Yeah. And these things were decorated and really
Look.
How arrogant of a king later on that, like a Manasseh, that still looked at that and decided, I'm going to put a pagan altar in there. Mm-hmm. Your arrogance is pretty extreme at that point.
He was extremely evil.
Yeah.
Chapter 4, you have anything else in 3?
No.
Chapter 4, now that the building is built, or is being built, it's time. It's the furnishings.
Right. The brazen altar is still the first thing. Everything's still in the same order.
12 bronze oxen.
Yeah, they're just larger and more of them.
Yeah. This is the Old Testament version of Fixer Upper. They're like, hey, Hiram, go in there with your people and decorate this up. And he's like, I don't know, this is kind of boho. This is kind of this is kind of country.
Yeah. Never heard that one.
Move that buzz.
Yeah.
Make it 10 times bigger.
The furnishing of the temple.
Yeah.
And again, if you read it from the perspective of why it was being written, and not just taking it from this was important for them to know how amazing the temple was before it was destroyed.
Because it's gone when they arrived back.
Yeah. So this list of extreme detail.
Right.
It had
and
to be
because
there.
they're going to rebuild. So are they going to try to rebuild exactly like that kind of thing? So
while I was reading, I had to keep reminding myself of these details are there for a reason.
So chapter 5, the ark is placed in the temple. So he brings up the tabernacle to the temple. So what happened to the old furnishings? Because the brazen altar that's in there now is bigger. Mm-hmm. The lavers are bigger. All of the stuff, there's multiple shewbread tables. So what happened? What happened to the old? I don't know. We probably never will. But
this was like the crowning moment. I can't even imagine the the atmosphere when all this was going
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
the
that
music.
atmosphere.
And
Yeah, 11 to 14 explains it, and it's really the pinnacle, awesome portion of, I think, coming together from like this whole process of the temple being done, and then them bringing the ark and setting it into the holy place, and then you see all of the singers. You see the singers reintroduced, and the musicians were assembled, and they're worshiping and they're praising, and they're just having a amazing time worshiping God. And what happens? God's presence fills the room as a cloud. It says.
Yeah, that had to be the most dynamic, because it even tells us you can feel it, that you can feel the trumpets and they're singing and everything is just building to that climax of the song, and then boom, God shows up, and that's just
amazing.
And I think the priests come out of setting the ark in there, and it says, I think, something along the lines like they had to stop ministering because the glory of the Lord was filling the house of God.
Yeah.
And could you imagine?
no,
I
can't.
If you're a Christian, man, and it's like that, just the goosebumps just overtake me as we talk about it.
Yeah.
The cloud.
Yeah, you can't even stand in there because of the.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One little weird thing there in verse 10, I know I like the little weird details. It says the 2 tablets were in the ark. They're the only thing in the ark. So I think we talked, where'd the pot of manna go?
Yeah, I saw that.
And where'd the brazen snake go?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know the brazen snake is still around, because later on they're going to destroy it because the people were worshiping it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it probably matters, but that's interesting.
So now we're into Sunday. We got the last 3 chapters of this week, 6 through 8. And in 6, Solomon addresses the people and speaks on God's faithfulness.
He built some like giant scaffolding, so he's standing there so that all the people could see.
And he
as
kneels
he prays.
down and lifts his hands to the end of the air and
fervently prays.
fervently. That is a good word.
Fervently.
It was a very long. Feels like as he was reading it.
Yeah, they're standing.
Yeah.
While he's doing that.
Yeah.
That's different there. I like verse 36 in there. This is yeah. And so he's got all these if-then statements. If this happens, then God will do this. But then he makes a point that we find in Romans 3. If they sin against thee, parentheses, for there is no man which sinneth not. All right, you can add that to your to Hebrews there, or to Romans.
Yeah, I just think
for all
this
of sin and
chapter
consider the glory
shows
of God.
where Solomon is very, and the nation is just so close to God at this point.
Yeah, without a doubt.
You'll see that it does not stay that way.
Well, and then at the beginning of chapter 7, the Lord, in verses 1 through 3, so he's made this massive prayer where he's speaking to the Lord, he's speaking to the people. Now you talk about, so the cloud's there, and now fire falls down and consumes it.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
So it says their face is on the pavement, but it's not completely in fear, because their comment, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Not, please God, don't destroy me. No, for he is good. That their heart was in a way that is opposite that most people, I think, would think at that point.
For me, it was verse 5. How many sacrifices were made? How many animals?
Yeah.
22,000 and a 21,100 sheep.
Says
Right?
here, and
20 and
No,
2,000 oxen and 120.
Yeah, 120,000 sheep. Yeah.
120. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
That's a lot of
So
sheep.
saying-
Yeah.
That is
Well,
a
it's a meal
lot.
they're having a feast
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
for multiple days. So it all didn't
That's
happen
a
in
lot
one
of
day.
animals.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
There's
I-
a lot of animals.
to piggyback off of what you were talking about there, how the fire comes down. We see again in verse 2, as we've seen in the previous chapters there, and the priest could not enter into the house of the Lord because of the glory of the Lord had filled the Lord's house. So we see it again, how the priests are not able to even go in because of the glory of the Lord.
Yeah. The rest of the chapter kind of revisits the covenant. If they follow, he will remain with them. He will not forsake as long as they follow.
And since we've already gone through 1st and 2nd Kings, we know where this is headed. This is like it's like watching episode 3, waiting for Darth Vader to finally arrive. We know this is going to happen in their life. It tells there in verses 19 through 22 that if they don't follow him, this temple is going to be wiped away. He's going to remove himself from it, and it's going to become a byword to the people that go by. And this is exactly what happens. He's writing this to the people that have lived it. And even if you look today, if you go to Jerusalem today, we look at the Temple Mount, and there is a Muslim mosque up there. It's a byword. You look at it and you say, they didn't follow God. Now, God's allowed them to come back to Israel, but they don't have their temple yet. And it's exactly because they didn't follow God. And so, I mean, we just see the fulfillment of that.
Yeah.
I think it's key in this chapter also to see how God comes and speaks to Solomon again. You know, because that's another thing that amazes me.
It confirms
how he comes to him and the Lord appears to him and gives him a word concerning the people, like you were saying, and that's just, to me, is awesome. So,
all right, our last chapter.
So Solomon moves on, builds cities, towns, keeps offering sacrifices, keeps following the Lord, and he shows his godly leadership and makes sure that everyone's doing their jobs pretty much in this chapter.
There was one weird verse there that stuck out to me that's not mentioned in 1 Kings. In verse 11 it says, "And Solomon brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David unto the house that he had built for her. For he said, My wife shall not dwell in the house of David, king of Israel. Why? Because the places are holy." Well, why is she there then? If you know she's following pagan worship, and you don't want to put her in there because that's a holy place, she shouldn't be in your house. She shouldn't be in your. You should have never married her. That was different. I'd never seen that before. I
think that, and this is looking like this might be out of left field, but I think we have an application here of how Solomon. Okay, so if she's from Egypt, and Egypt's like representing the world, and and she's brought into this holy place. I mean, and he's married to her, and he knows it, so he says you can't be here. This is kind of like to me, like Solomon knew he was unequally yoked.
Oh, I think you're exactly right.
And just when you're a person that follows God, how you should choose to try to find a spouse who follows God. You should choose to find people that follow God. You should, go back to those who do not love the Lord will not help you serve the Lord. That was a principle from Reformers Unanimous that, out of the 10, that's one that always stuck with me, because that was something that I needed and I struggle with is finding people to yoke yourself with. And Solomon knew that, hey,
this isn't right, but
we're just gonna go build her another house somewhere else
because I can.
And ultimately, he has enough people in his life that aren't following the Lord where it eventually takes him down.
Yeah.
And,
it's the beginning of the fall.
Yeah, it is. That's what, unfortunately.
The next chapter is the Queen of Sheba.
Well, that one's.
We see in 7 and 9 the different groups of people that weren't of Israel. I'm assuming that those are the same folks that were the ones from the building, or that were building the temples, and it talks about how they had to pay taxes. So even though you're not of God, you're still going to pay the taxes.
We didn't mention verse 14 in chapter 7. That's the famous verse. "If my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked way, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land." That has to be mentioned. So there we go.
Yeah. There you go.
So great stuff.
Yeah. So next week we see the Kings and
Yeah,
that whole thing.
we'll get into Rehoboam and they're on. Thanks,
Nice.
man.
The sadness.
Well, that was fun. Appreciate you being part of it.
Thanks.
If you've
Thanks for making us famous. With the
you've
Shannon Chains next week.
No, you guys are the famous ones.
you've watched this, so you know how we unfortunately end this
Unfortunately, I would
This
say fortunately.
painful display at the end. Do you have one for us?
I do not.
Okay.
I should have had one. I knew that this was the way it ended.
This is the way.
I come providing gifts.
I didn't want to steal the joy.
This
It
This
does
is
bring
the-
me joy, making him
he
shake his
has-
head.
He has spoken.
What does a nut say when it sneezes?
I know.
Cashew.
Oh man,
Yeah, it's really good.
I like it.
All right. Well, thank you for watching again. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week for episode 20.
The awkward close.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just look at each other awkwardly.